Welcome to the London Horror Movie Club. I'm horror writer Lauren Jane Barnett.
And I'm Chris Sapikowski, Lauren's older brother, and I've been watching horror movies since I was 8.
Join us as we talk about the wild, weird, and wonderful horror films set in England's eerie capital. Welcome back, everyone. This month on London Horror Movie Club, we have with us Spencer Hawken, a director, filmmaker who founded the Romford Horror Festival, which listeners, of course, heard about in the last months, for several times, actually, over the last several months. And then last year took a huge leap and bought the Lumiere Cinema, bringing back to life beloved cinema with cult specialty nights. He still also runs multiple film festivals, including the upcoming Romford Film Festival in May, and he appears and supports in a variety of indie films like Mosaic, Video Shop Tales of Terror series, and The Call. Welcome, Spencer.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure, honestly. So everybody I know has been asking you about the cinema lately, but I think one of the most interesting things to ask you is how you ended up in this world, because you didn't start out as like going to film school. You had a very interesting road.
I don't know. I mean, how far back do we want to go? Do we want to go back as far as 1976?
Oh, yeah, why not? Do it.
So my love of horror was 1976. So I remember coming down the stairs in the middle of the night. My dad was watching a film on BBC Two, because back that I say in the middle of the night, it wasn't in the middle of the night, but to a 3-year-old child, 1976. So back then it would have been the middle of the night, but it probably was just 10 o'clock. So I came down the stairs. I'm sat on the outside the living room looking through the banister at what my dad was watching on the TV, and then somebody died and I went and he said to me, if you're going to watch the film, don't watch it on the stairs, come in and watch it. So, and that started a regular relationship of us sitting and watching a double bill of horror every Saturday night on BBC Two. And it was always something like The Bride of Frankenstein with something a little bit more recent. And that happened for a few years, and then it changed. The program changed like iterations, and then it sort of carried on right up to the 90s when there was this character called Dr. Terror. And that kind of, so that was the horror side, and that's when I knew that horror and me had some sort of relationship. Fast forward to 1989, and I opened up a video shop. And when I opened up the video shop, I inherited a load of video nasties. Ooh. So what would happen is I would then, I had this like back room, and I would charge people £5 to come in on a Friday night and watch a video nasty. And it came with a can of Special Brew, which is like really bad alcohol. But back in 1989, it was like, that was like the dog's doodahs, It was like, this is amazing. So we would sit and we would watch films. And back then, horror was kind of going through a stage where it was kind of generic. There were no shocks. So to watch a lot of these Italian films, everyone was going mad because it was like, people's faces were coming off, and, it was gore to a level that most people hadn't seen. Sometimes I'd have to pause the film so they could go outside and have a smoke. It was like, that was where it was. So that's kind of my, how I loved horror, how I got into horror. And then from there, it was reviews for years, probably 15, 20 years, writing reviews for different things. And then before you know it, I was in film. Yeah. So, sorry, I just like segued in this massive chunk of my life in an irrelevant way.
No, that's perfect. I think it's interesting that you said you went from, you had your video shop and then you did reviews, because My boss worked at a rental store, video store. I worked at a movie theater, and so we always kind of talk about that. I don't think there's a better person to do reviews than the video store, employee, because you always would go to a video store like, do you have anything that's like this, or what would be something similar? Like I like this movie, and then you have to have like five recommendations to
Yep.
be like, oh well, if you like that, you might want to check out A, B, and C. So that's really cool that you kind of took it that far or took it to the next step, I guess, and did
Yep.
reviews. But it's
Yep.
also interesting that you were doing your own little movie festivals in the back of the video shop.
Yeah, normally like 5 to 10 people every Friday night. It was like, and the whole thing was illegal, and that's what made it so much fun. We're showing the films, which was illegal. I was in possession of the videotapes, which was illegal. And I was illegally passing on alcohol. So it was like, it's like I was breaking all the laws all at once.
I
And
love
that was great. And I suppose the other thing I should point out is I was living in a place called Portland in Dorset, and it's like you had two backgrounds. You were either a fisherman or you were in the Navy.
Oh.
And that was it. Like it was everyone just fell into that criteria. So then I was also the oddball, the guy that left school and immediately decided I was going to open up a video shop.
That is pretty cool. Was it, so you said you inherited it? Was it just chance then that you became the video shop?
It was the tapes that I inherited. So what happened was I met this guy who he's like, oh, I used to have a video shop. He's like, and I've got 500 to 600 videotapes. He said, would you like to buy them to build up your stock? Because I opened up this video shop and I had maybe 200 films. That was it. And I'm like, yeah, sure. It'll be good to like bulk it up a little tiny bit. So I bulked it up with these films, but all of these films pretty much were all preset. So they were all from sort of before 1984. So I'm having to sit these stickers, these little 18, 15 PG stickers on every single film, sometimes just lying through my teeth. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to find out what that is. I'm just going to say that's a 15. And then, like these parents would turn up at the shop really angry that, their kids watch Straw Dogs. Which they knew, and I didn't know. I didn't know about Straw Dogs, but they knew that Straw Dogs was both banned and most definitely not a 15 certificate.
That's amazing.
What was the penalty like? You said that the video nasties. I'm not from England. I didn't grow up there, so I don't understand the concept of it being illegal. But if you had rented out one of the video nasties, what is the penalty for something like that?
I could have gone to prison.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, like people were being arrested for being in possession of these films. People were being arrested people were definitely going to prison if they were copying these films and produce it and selling them to people. They were going, it was illegal anyway, but copy a video nasty. I knew people who'd gone to prison for 2 or 3 years because they'd got Cannibal Holocaust, that sort of thing. Like, sorry, they hadn't got it. They'd got it and they'd copied it and they were selling copies to their friends. So,
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It was a very draconian time.
It's such especially our generation, it's such a formative one. I like my brother, I guess everyone knows I'm American. But being here for most of my adult life, anybody my generation who likes horror films has a story from when everything was banned, from, you knew somebody who got arrested, to how did you get access to these films when you went on holiday to Holland, to, I really thought the best little whorehouse in Texas was going to be, because it was on the third shelf band list. I thought it was going to
Yep.
be way racier than it was. You know, you
Yeah.
get these great. Do you have any very fond or horrified memories about some of these band films?
Um, I have, well, I think I kind of touched on it a little tiny bit, was the film Alien Terror.
Mm.
So it wasn't banned, it just wasn't available. Like after they took it off the shelves because it wasn't certified. It slipped into an unavailable world. And I chucked it on one night for the group of people that would come around every Friday night. And people were getting really stressed out by this film because of the claustrophobia of the location and because most of them had never seen anything quite like it. You know, like the alien turns into what I can only describe as a frisbee at one point and slowly cuts someone's head off, and you see it slowly dangle on, I don't know what you'd even call that, like whatever the gunk was that comes out your neck, and then it drops on the floor. And I always remember the cover for Alien Terror was amazing because the cover was a picture of somebody's head with all this gunk coming out the bottom of it, where it's been severed by this frisbee alien. That's and I just remember it quite early on. One of there was a kid that finds this shiny stone on the beach, and this kid's like, "Oh wow, this is cool, this is cool," but you know there's something bad's going to happen. You don't see that kid again for a while, and then when you see it, you know, like the mum's looking for the kid. I'm sure it was the mum, and was like, "Oh, you know, there's my daughter. Are you okay? Are you okay? Why won't you answer me? Why won't you answer me?" Puts her hand on the kid's shoulder, and the kid turns around, and it's got no face. It's
Oh,
just like gunk.
wow.
And it's like and that was the first thing. That was the first thing that was triggering people, you know, because this is a little girl.
Yeah.
You know, this is, you know, 3, 4, 5-year-old little girl that they've put all this prosthetic on. And these people were freaking out. And I just remember this one guy was like pacing up and down outside the shop, like smoking, like put the fag out, lit another one up, and it's like he was really stressed. He was really wound up. And then he wouldn't go home because he was scared to go home. So me and a friend basically sat in this video shop all night with him watching comedy films so that he could calm down and go home at like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my God.
He was just so upset. He'd never seen anything like it. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, it kind of triggered me in some way. I think it was the claustrophobia. And again, where I was, as I always refer to it, as dragged up on Portland, there were lots of caves. And me and my friends would go in caves. And we, you know, like you could go for miles. There was a massive hospital built under the ground on Portland, and everyone was always breaking into this hospital because it was World War II hospital, and there was a part of the island that people would refer to as Forbidden City where there were war games, so we were always going into there. Sometimes the only way to get in was to go through caves to get in there. So for all of us that have this great experience of going into caves, now it's like there's no way I'm getting into a fucking cave ever again. Like, and to this day, between that and The Descent, I now have a rational fear of caves. Like, I'll go into a cave, but I wouldn't go into a cave on my own. Whereas before, I would have been like, oh, yeah, I'm in a cave, you know.
Mm.
And I think that's the beauty of horror,
Mm.
is that it can completely change your life,
Yeah.
positive and negative.
Totally.
100%. 100%. It can definitely, it touches a fear that you didn't know you had, and then it kind of brings it to the surface where you're going to think about it when it's in front of you the whole time. Voodoo is that way for me, and I could tell you that it's probably not real, but I don't mess with voodoo stuff. I don't have any interest in going to New Orleans. I don't have any interest in going to Haiti.
Yep.
Nope.
Crazy. So I'm going like forward in time. You're doing reviews, and then you end up in being in a film. How did that come about?
So I used to do reviews for Fright Fest.
Ooh.
Um, so randomly I'd do reviews for really strange places. Um, Alan Bryce. Um, I would do reviews for the New York Times, and I would do reviews for Fright Fest and a couple of Spanish
Ooh.
newspapers. And Ian Rattray invited me to the set of a film that he was working on in around, and the film was Creep, in the London Underground.
Yeah.
And I got my first film appearance in Creep. So I was like, oh, this is fun. Like I was on set, they needed people. So initially they shot two things with me, but they cut one of them. Probably because I can't act for toffee. Um, although, as I always like to tell people, I've acted with Royal Shakespeare Company, um, which is actually true. Um, I was in Merchant of Venice. But um, yeah, whatever it was I did that day just wasn't good enough. So actually, the only part of me that exists in Creep is my foot.
No.
And I think I'm the last thing you see in Creep.
Are you the guy who gives her money at the end?
No, you just see my foot. I literally, all you see is my foot.
That's amazing.
I can't, to be honest with you, it's such a long time ago. I wasn't given any action. I was just like, can you do me a favor? Can you walk around there? And I come around the side and it's like my foot goes down. And I'd got these black shoes on and I just put my foot down
That's it.
and that was it. But I've not watched the film since it was new, so I don't know, like, I can't really remember the context.
That's amazing.
And then from that, there was I'd moved to Cornwall, and there was this. I couldn't find work, so I'd moved down to Cornwall, and I was thinking, actually, I've got all these qualifications, I can do all this stuff. I get down to Cornwall, and what I didn't anticipate, like the rest of the country. So sorry, I should backtrack a little tiny bit. I've lived everywhere. I have literally lived everywhere in this country. It's like there isn't a city that I've not lived in. So I just assumed the whole of the country was the same. Go down to Cornwall, couldn't find any work. All my review work was starting to kind of, I wouldn't say dry up, but because I couldn't get to the cinemas, I was finding that I wasn't able to get I'd have to go to London for like 2 or 3 days, and the money was being swallowed on train fare to get me there. And someone said to me, and I'd applied for all these jobs and I just couldn't get any job. I couldn't even get a job working behind a bar. And because every job that you apply for, there's 100 other people applying for it. And I thought, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I was writing reviews on this really bizarre website called Chow, which was like, it was product reviews. And someone sent me this link and they said to me, have you considered doing this? And they sent me this link and it said, we need extras to work on Wednesday night. And it was 9 p.m. through till 7 a.m. on a top secret television show. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do that. And then I contacted them, a company called Red, and then they sent me back all this paperwork, and there were all these NDAs all over it. And I was like, oh, what's this? What's this? This is fun, my first thing. And apparently they couldn't get anybody to do this. That like the amount of people that they could they fell through the vetting, or they didn't have the right look. They weren't, like normal looking enough, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They were all quite, extras was, to work as an extra was quite different back then. It's not like everybody knows someone that's been in a film now, Anyway, so I turned up and it was Doctor Who. And then so the whole of the first series of Doctor Who, Christopher Eccleston, I appear in every single episode at some point. Whether you see me facially or you see me as an arm, so I progressed from a foot to an arm.
No.
So, and sometimes, sometimes I'd just be running across a bridge, or, but I was there I'm there for the big showdown with the Daleks. I'm hiding behind stuff. I turned up everywhere. And then I think I did most of I'd say I did 50% of the second series. And then by the time it got to Matt Smith, it had all fizzled out. But because I would just do anything and I would allow them to do anything to me, I remember one night in the middle of a quarry, I'm literally like stripped down to my boxers. It's probably -2 or -3. And I'm having studs put into my head. And like they were doing all this other stuff to me, and then they dressed me up in leather. And basically that was I was something called Future Kind, from the story Utopia. But I just literally I let them shave all my hair off. I know I don't really have an awful lot most of the time anyway, but back then I did actually grow my hair. So I let them do that. That was actually the thing that started my hair coming off. It was the fact that I let them shave all my hair off, and then it's like, oh, actually, quite like this.
Yeah.
And then from there, I just I was just getting work as a background artist or whatever it was they wanted to call. So I got the pleasure of working with Bill Pullman and Sarah Michelle Gellar and all these other people, just in random scenes. And I did that for probably about 5 or 6 years. And then I thought, oh, I'll make a film.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So what was that process like? I mean, how did you enjoy making a film?
So the process that led up to it was that someone sent me a film to review. And I always have a policy that if I can't say anything nice about it, if it was an indie film, if I can't say anything nice about it, I won't say anything. Because back then the indie market was much smaller. Certainly in this country. So now that film was Rika. I hated it. I hated it with a passion. I thought it was a load of old shit. And I refused to review it. And the guy's like, and I tried to explain to him that I didn't enjoy the film, so I didn't feel that I could review it. And he said to me, well, he said, we did all this, and we only had like $150,000 to work with. And I'm thinking, I could do a film for less than $150,000. That's a lot of money. Even with conversion, that's a lot of money. So I set out to make a film where we didn't spend any money at all.
Ah, wow.
But we would make enough noise that people would want to be involved with it. So yeah, that was, and that film was Death Walks, which in reflection is a load of old toffee, but it was a good experience. You know, we ended up shooting that film technically 3 times because people lost interest in the project, and because nobody was getting paid. Each night that we would reassemble, you'd have less people. You know, like, and then some of the main roles dropped out, and then, but they were essential roles. You had to finish their story, so we ended up having to reshoot some of their stuff. So over the passage of time, which was probably about 3 years in total, we recast one of the characters 3 times, and one of the characters that we couldn't recast, I was fortunate enough to get Francesca Ciardi from Cannibal Holocaust to agree to be in it. And what we did is we made her create like this bridge where we didn't need to see what happened with one of the other characters. So they kind of, you were able to figure out in your own head what had happened. And we created this completely random, like, oh, hang on a minute, I'm going to write something on notes now. You know, like that's how literally ridiculous the whole thing was. But it worked, and she filled it. She filled the role, she filled the, you know, and she was only on screen for maybe 5 minutes, but she just kept coming back through the film. So it looked like she was always there. And yeah, she filled the void, so we didn't have to explain the fate of some of these characters. But yeah, the process was great and hard because I'm not someone that mentally works. In some ways, I'm very, very fast. So in terms of wit and sarcasm, I'm very fast. But in terms of like useful thought, I sometimes need a little bit more time to process. And I'm sure you've experienced this, is when you're working in indie film, is everyone's got an opinion. So the minute you stop to pause, someone will come up to you and say, have you thought about doing this? Or wouldn't it be interesting if my character did this? Or how about if I did this instead? You know, like, oh, it doesn't really make sense to the story, but what if I pull out a rubber chicken? You know, like that sort of. And I fell foul of allowing people to kind of
do it.
Get more than I wanted them to have. Luckily, I cut most of that out in the end result. But and I think that was the thing. So in terms of being a filmmaker, because I need lots of thought time, and if a shot doesn't come out the way that I wanted it to come out, I need to go and talk, and then people would come and talk to me. But by the time I made my second film, I'd got to the point that I would turn around and go, fuck off. But my first film, I just accepted people just come in, and apologies for the swearing, by the way.
Oh,
that's
no.
twice. No. That's twice I've sworn now.
No, most people swear on the show, weirdly.
Okay, that's good.
Most people in our family swear too. So you think you're amongst friends here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Definitely. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Oh no, I was curious. So what about indie horror? What makes you like, respect, want to be around indie horror? I know you have the movie festival. You know made indie film movies. You were in them, but
you've been very supportive to a lot of us who've made indie film movies in other ways as well, including time, effort.
Okay, so there's actually different answers to different points of that. Okay, so sorry, I'm going to go off on a tangent now, bore your listeners into a coma. So I guess the first tangent is, I think that most people fundamentally are nice people.
Mm.
and most people try to do the best that they can do. So in terms of supporting indie film, I like to think that fundamentally I'm a nice person. And if I can help people in any way, shape, or form, I will try and do that. The truth is, I know that sometimes I'm not a very nice person, but the parts that I can be, I will be. So that's, and then what led that to that was when I made Death Walks, I submitted my film to a number of film festivals, and it was, obviously we'd all like our films that we make to be picked up by every single film festival. But the reality is that our films probably aren't that good, and that's why we don't get accepted. But there are some exclusions to that, and there are exclusions in the terms that some festivals will actually willingly take your money to submit your film and have absolutely no intention of showing it, to the point that they won't even bother to watch it. So what someone said to me is, before I submitted actually halfway through the process of submitting my film, they said to me that what I need to do is invest in a premium Vimeo account and send a unique link to every single festival with your film on it. And they said that way you'll find out what festivals watched your films and what festivals didn't. So what I chose to do was exactly that, and I discovered that virtually nobody was watching my film. Some festivals were watching the trailer but not watching the film. And I guess if you're a really busy I don't know, I don't think it's right. Actually, no, I can't justify that in any way, shape, or form. If you watch the trailer and you just think that this is terrible, that you don't watch the film, I don't think that is right, because sometimes a trailer can give a very different view of a film.
Mm.
I appreciate that some trailers are so bad and that the films follow through are so bad that they shouldn't be allowed, airway. But yeah, I discovered, and then one of those festivals I had a very good relationship with, and they didn't watch my film. If you backtrack through this conversation, you might be able to figure out what festival that was. They didn't watch my film, and I thought, actually, I've invested a lot of time helping you guys for years, and you didn't even watch my film, and that made me really sad. And that's when I decided that there needed to be a new kind of film festival that would not necessarily be buying in content unless, or going out and hunting out content unless you're putting on an extra screen to put that in, which we now do. So what we do is we essentially allocate one screen per festival to content that we have either deliberately sourced. So this year, Cold Storage was one of those, or that is retro that we think in some way would complement. And I can explain that a little bit better. I think that actually some people just won't do indie film. So you lure them in with something that we know that they do want to watch. And then while they're there, they're drinking at the bar, they just happen to meet an independent filmmaker, something that they're totally against in their moral compass. You know, like, I'm not going to watch indie film. I only do good quality film. They have a conversation with that person, they grow to like that person, and then they turn around and go, I'm going to watch that person's film because he's such a nice guy. So that's the rationale behind it. But what I don't believe is that you should take away from the period of time that you choose to allocate to indie film, which in this case was always two screens worth of independent film. You don't interrupt that flow. So you are trying to show the maximum amount of indie. Some people say we show too much. But we're trying to show the maximum amount of indie films as we possibly can on those two screens within the time period that we have, which is 4 days. And we try to do the best that we can for that filmmaker with that session. But I'm very much aware that, you know, probably the last couple of years, because we've had so many projects going on at the same time, that maybe we've taken our eye off the ball a little tiny bit the last 2 years because we've been focused on other things, you know, namely the cinema, that the attention hasn't gone in that would normally have gone in previously because the time hasn't been there. But hopefully now the cinema is looking after itself a little bit more. In future, we can get back to offering the kind of service that we always felt we offered with the film festival, and the, you know, helping filmmakers therein.
I mean, I think just to say on behalf of filmmakers, I know it's a bit like when you watch your own film, you see your own flaws. You probably see flaws in how you would have done the festival. But I mean, we had last month well, it'll be last month when this comes out, somebody who I met because of the festival, and like it's a really amazing place as an indie filmmaker to meet other people, to find encouragement, to find connections. And I think you guys have to give yourselves credit for making that kind of environment, because not every festival does encourage you to even spend time with any of the other people at the festival, and that's something that Romford does very well.
We try.
If you don't mind me saying, I'm not, I swear, I'm not on Spencer's payroll. We really like this festival.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely try. We're trying to create a community in whatever format, and this is the thing that I think a lot of people struggle with, is you're trying to create multiple communities. You know, like you're trying to create a film festival that both pleases the filmmaker and pleases the audience. And the trouble being is actually they have very little in common.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of film festivals don't always acknowledge the fact that they're trying to cater for two audiences, and they focus on one or the other rather than trying to deal with both. Which I think is possibly the reason why there's so many film festivals that just are year one film festivals, and then people are like, oh, this is too much like hard work. You either don't get the filmmakers or you don't get the audience, you know. And with Romford Film Festival, which is coming up next month or whenever this goes out, I don't know when that will be. It might already be next month or the month after, wherever. It's not next month, it's the month after, sorry. But you know, like we've been beating away at Romford Film Festival for 10 years now. And we still don't have the mix right, because it's much harder to sell indie film to people when it's multiple genres. It's easy when it's horror. Well, I say easy, it's not easy, but you know, it's easier when you're pulling people in for one genre. But when you're trying to encourage someone that's come to watch a slasher film to then watch a film about urban gardeners in Rome, it's quite hard. You know, you lose that. But by the same token, I try not to group too of the same type of films together, because the whole thing is about exploration and that you can move through different genres. You know, the amount of people that come to Romford Film Festival and they said to me, I would never watch a horror film. I would never watch a horror film. I'm not going to, I'm not even going to. And now they are diehard Romford horror attendees because they like they understand that horror isn't what their perception of horror was. Horror can be far more thoughtful. Horror can be very, it can be an interesting journey. It can be both amusing and scary, or amusing and gory. It can make them think about things in different ways. It can change their mindset. I think horror is probably, one of the greatest genres based on the fact that it can take you in so many different directions, whereas a comedy film takes you in one direction.
Mm.
It's very difficult. So yeah, Romford Film Festival, we've been slogging away at that for years. We still don't get the numbers that we would like, but but I'm still a believer of if you build it, they will come. And I'm still saying, I used to say when we get to year 5, now I say we get to year 10, but we're at year 10. So now I'm saying year 15 when we get to year 15. And then the other thing being is I'm not the kind of person that goes out and asks people for money. Saying that, I did 2 crowdfunders for the cinema, but I'm not the person that goes out and asks people for money generally. So we don't get any sponsorship for any of the festivals. We just do it off of our own back. Some years we make a loss, some years we make a profit. Some years, it's fantastic. Some years it feels awful. But we're doing our own thing. We're doing it the way that we want to do it. And if people don't like it, they can die in the fire. Yeah. But we do, as I said, we don't get help. Whereas other people, they set up a festival, and the first thing they do is they like, oh, I'm going to take some money off of the BFI, or I'm going to get money off of this person. They just take off of different organisations. I'm going to do this. We're just like winging it. We're doing it our own way, at our own pace, and we're not responsible to anyone. No one's going to turn around to us and say, oh, as a sponsor, I demand this. We do what we want to do, and we don't ask anyone for anything. A couple of times I've had people that show up as sponsors, but they're more like in-kind sponsors, like maybe they send us some DVDs, maybe they send us, some books. Sometimes I feel like actually I can do them a favor by making them a sponsor. But realistically, we've never actually had a sponsor at either festival.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, when you're curating a festival, is there ever been a time, specifically more on the horror side, but is there a movie that you've seen that you just kind of fell in love with, or really liked this movie, but it didn't fit what you were trying to curate on the festival side, that maybe didn't make it into the festival?
That's an interesting question, because my curation of the film festival is quite funny. So I am actually one of this is people always seem mightily surprised when I say this, but when it comes to the actual curation of the film festival, I am only involved in the scheduling, and by the time the films have all been scheduled, I might have only just seen 1% of them. So in my commitment to be honest and transparent and not end up being found guilty of doing favors for filmmakers and all that sort of stuff, I'm just not involved. I don't watch the films until the festival runs. And sometimes I might see, so Dana, for example, I saw that at Darkfest.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have seen that until the day it aired at Romford Horror.
Ah.
And that's why often the films don't match. That's why, you know, like there's no consistency in the film style. So, well, there is to a degree, but that's why sometimes the films don't feel like they belong together.
Mm.
So, first of all, I'm of the belief that you don't just want to sit there and watch a block of films that look similar. The second thing is what I'll do is I will specifically look at the different headings and the different sessions, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so here's what I'm going to do is this block I'm going to schedule primarily around run times.
Mm.
This block I'm going to show a film that's got a £50,000 budget, and then I'm going to show a film right next to it that's got £50 budget.
Mm.
Then I'm going to do this, and then this person has made 25 films, and this film has this is the first film they've ever made, and by the looks of it, because I've not seen it, it looks like this is probably two friends that made this film on a iPhone.
Mm.
So yeah. Now that being said, I do have a selections team and I do have a judging team who watch all the films. So every film that is submitted to Romford Horror is seen by a minimum of 5 eyes, and every film that is submitted to Romford Film Festival is seen by a minimum of 7 eyes before it gets to judging. So, and that way we know that we're doing our best by the film, and that I'm not just letting one person decide the fate of a film.
Mm.
So, in terms of, there's always films that every year surprise me. You know, there's the films that I think, oh, people will queue up to see this, and then you go in the screen and there's like 5 people in there. And then in the film that in the screen that's next to it that you didn't expect anyone to turn up for, there's like 100 or 150 or 200. At this last festival, I have to be very careful how I word this, but there are films that I am amazed they got the audience that they got. And then at the same time, on an alternative screen, there is a film that was very, very good. And you could just tell that it was very, very good before you'd even got to see it. That didn't pull the audience. And sometimes, you know, like when I'm sat there in a screen watching a film because I'm doing the Q&A at the end, I'm thinking to myself, what on earth were the selectors thinking when they picked this film? This is, you know, this is terrible. But at least I know we're offering something that's honest and pure, and we're not just doing it because we think, oh, actually, this person's going to bring us 150 audience or 200 audience.
Yeah.
We're showing the films because we think there's something about them.
Mm.
And audience, in terms of the audience that filmmaker can bring, it very rarely comes into mind unless it's maybe a 3-minute short. So, you know, we don't ever think, you know, like I'll give you an example. The Video Shop Tales of Terror. The first one was pretty much shot in its entirety in premises that I ran at that moment in time. So it was a shopping centre. I was the manager of the shopping centre, and almost every single short film in that film shot in the centre. We knew that was going to bring in an audience, but we didn't pick it based on that reason. As a matter of fact, I probably made them sweat longer for them to discover whether we would show it or not than everybody else, because I think the assumption was it was shot there, so of course we'll show it.
Mm. No, that's fair. Do you find that, especially now that you've been involved in quite a lot of indie filmmaker films, like the people who did Video Shop, you were in Mosaic and you were in Video Shop too, and like you're in Witches, you've been in a lot of like the indie films. Do you find that it's hard to separate those hats of being, part of a film, and then you run a cinema and you're trying to do the festivals fairly?
I don't know how to wear the hats.
Fair.
Is the answer. I don't know. Sometimes I forget that I was in a film. So I forgot that I was in Mosaic.
Oh, no way.
Um I literally forgot I was in Mosaic, and we'd agreed to show it. None of the selectors made any comment about the fact that I'd appeared in it in their comments. And then someone said to me at Horror on Sea, "Saw you last night." And I'm like, "I wasn't here last night." "No, in the film." I'm like, "What film?" And they're like, "Oh, Mosaic." And I'm like, "Did I do Mosaic?" "Yeah, I did do Mosaic." "Yes, I did do." And I've just forgotten all about it.
Oh, wow.
So, but yeah, I don't know in terms of like the different hats. I'm discovering that I'm not as switched on as I thought I was. So I don't really do the wearing of different hats very well. Yeah, I should probably wear more hats and then maybe get myself into some sort of situation where, I can turn around and say, I don't know. But yeah, I'm definitely not as, and I think that's a mix of a few years of bad health and a few years of stress. Um, because when the cinema shut, my retirement plan was lost. My retirement plan was I get to 55, which is literally knocking at the door, and I was going to work full time on the film festival. But then when the cinema shut and nobody was interested in taking on the cinema, and the option is to take it to either stop it from being the Romford Film Festival and become just another film festival, or take it to some cinema like View that was going to take all the money before anything you could do anything with it. All the money of the admission fees would all be, for general patrons watching film, would all be swallowed up by their wants. So there was no way, at one point I thought about moving Romford Horror Festival to a community centre and running it out of a community centre. And then I thought, actually, Romford Horror and Romford Film Festival kept the cinema financially buoyant for 3 months each a year. So maybe we just do more of that. And that's when the idea to take the cinema over came. So yeah, that's so. And as I said, now I'm discovering that I've probably taken on more than my brain can deal with, and I find myself in long periods of time where I'm not very functional at all. Like sometimes I go to work at the cinema and I'm like, okay, so today I've got to do this and I've got to do this and I've got to do this, and none of that happens because people come and talk to me. And then you talk to them and then you almost feel like you're mentally zapped. Like I don't have it in me to be able to now sit at my computer and do this because I'm either so low mentally because I've just explained to this person for the 35th time about how this cinema, one of the biggest things that always makes me laugh is someone comes into me at the cinema and they say to me, this is never going to last. And I'm like, why isn't it going to last? And they're like, well, you haven't got any customers, have you? And then I kind of look at them and I'm like, why would you go to the cinema and then just hang out in the lobby? Where do you think people are in the cinema?
Yeah.
You're not
inside.
seeing them because they're behind that door and they're watching a film. Yes, there might only be 5 people in that screen, but we've got 7 screens and an 8th that does like more community stuff. They're all in screens, but I lose count of the times, and every time I hear that, it's like it mentally does something to you. And we talk to all the staff and they all say the same. It's like, like they say to us, you don't have any customers. Well, how the fuck do they know we don't have any customers? They're not, they don't have x-ray vision. They can't see through that wall. And I don't know. But yeah, that sort of stuff, I think that really grinds my gears. And you have a lot of those sort of conversations. Nobody knows you're here. You need to advertise more. So, and it's like, well, actually, people do know we're here because we've got a mailing list every week of 5,000. So that's 5,000 people that are very much aware we're here. And then, and then where do you advertise nowadays? You've got no local press. You've got no local radio.
Right.
You do stuff on social media. We're very active on social media. And as I said, these conversations, they zap your soul. And by the time you've had 3 of these conversations one morning, all you want to do is either go and punch a kitten or, eat, which is my backup plan for everything. If I'm having a bad day, I'm just going to eat. And I will eat and eat and eat because food brings me joy.
Yeah.
Food and travel bring me joy. And then I'm like, oh, I'm too fat now. I can't be bothered to do anything. I'm going to go home and I'm going to do this when I get home. And then I go home and I sit at home and I'm like, am I going to do that? Or am I going to watch the next episode of such and such? Oh, I'll watch the next episode of such and such. And then I'll do that work afterwards. But by the time that work happens, I'm thinking about my next meal.
Yeah.
So I'm finding that I'm currently like really bad at organization and the skills that float around that, because there are a lot of people that I'm sure I'm sure mean well, but there's only so many times a day that you can have these same conversations with people before you turn their lives into a horror film.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah. And the other thing that's really difficult as well is because we're not just a cinema, we classify ourselves as an event venue. So, last week we had a film quiz and we had live music.
You've got a wine tasting, don't you? It's coming up.
That's Wednesday night. We've got wine tasting night coming up. We've got whiskey tasting sessions coming up. We've got the second, so the idea of the wine tasting night is this first one is variable. The second one, the sommelier that's going to come and run it is going to start taking us through countries, exploring the wine regions and telling you about all that sort of stuff. So there's education in there. We do well-being, so we have sound baths and we have all this mindfulness stuff. We do art sessions. We've got Hannah who comes and does photography classes. This is it's slowly becoming what we wanted it to become, which is more of a hub for the community. But as I said, it's mentally draining, and I find that I'm kind of like leaving all these different things that I all used to do behind because I'm trying to focus on what's happening right now rather than what's happening in 10 minutes time, whereas I was always what's happening in 10 minutes time, not so much now. So yeah,
Makes sense.
sorry, that's a proper old ramble, that wasn't it?
No, it's brilliant,
It's
actually.
great.
Really interesting. I can't believe it, but I think we're at the end of our hour, which has happened way too fast. I had so many things on Dusty Rose. We're gonna have to get you back, is the answer to this. But I want to end by saying the Lumiere cinema is amazing. It's very easy to get to if you're in London, and they're I know you have a lot of fun things on, and I want to make sure that people try and go to the festival in May, which will be next month when this comes out. So would you give us, as our last thing, some information about the festival and what they might expect if they've never been?
So Romford Film Festival at the end of May will run for 4 days. I think I'm not going to give the dates because I always get the dates wrong, but it's going to run from the Friday to the second bank holiday Monday. 3 screens. It's actually 2 film festivals that merge. So we have the Romford Film Festival and then we have the Eurasian Creative Guild Film Festival, which shows films from Central Asia that don't normally get shown in the UK, or an awful lot of places in Europe. So we run the 2 film festivals. This year we're doing something slightly different in the fact that they don't cohabit the space. What's going to happen is Romford Film Festival is going to end and the Eurasian Film Festival is going to keep going. Whereas normally they both end at the same time. So this year, one continues longer because we've discovered that we can give them more attention if we're not focusing on our own stuff. They like to be very involved with the community, so therefore they have a lot of expectation that we're going to be involved in their film festival from a British perspective. But yeah, all genres. There will be Saturday, which will be primarily focused around horror. We've got that I am aware of through the scoring. We have some phenomenal films coming. Can't tell you what they are because obviously they're not selected yet, but scoring is very, very high on this film festival, and the submissions, as usual, are very, very high. So it will be an interesting 4 days. You can come and you can meet lots of filmmakers from all over the world. This is definitely more international. So we find that more international filmmakers turn up for Romford Film Festival than do for Romford Horror. And yeah, it's always a lot of fun. There's always a lot of really great films that later on turn up on Netflix or Amazon Prime that you can go, oh yeah, I saw that at Romford. That's always quite nice. Sometimes, we've had films that turn up on Disney Plus of all places. You don't even expect, because it's Disney Plus. You don't expect those indie films to end up on Disney Plus. And that's good. Last year we had 7 films that were Oscar shortlisted. So let's see what happens this year.
Nice.
But yeah, again, proper mixed bag. We'll have films that are made by 2 people on their iPhone, films that were made for several $1 million. It's a broad church.
Brilliant. Thank you
Very
so
cool.
much for being on here, Spencer. And I hope our listeners have enjoyed it. We will definitely have to get you back on.
Thank you very much. And sorry for rabbiting on, but once I start, I'm like the Energizer Bunny. You just need to flip the batteries out to stop me from talking.
That's what we
I love
it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. And thank you, of course, to our listeners. This has been the London Horror Movie Club. If you want to share your thoughts about this episode, please head to our Facebook or YouTube pages. We're grateful to Kukurbit, who made our music. Thank you for listening, and please join us next time for the London Horror Movie Club.